Well, good afternoon to you. It's 4:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Congressman Andy Harris is here at 4:30, and then at 5:30 from the Arlington Republican Party, Matthew Hurt joins us ahead of more early voting tomorrow in Arlington. I'll be out there. Corey will be out there. 8 a.m. at the Courthouse Plaza, coffee and donuts in hand. And hopefully you have some I voted stickers to bring with you or to retrieve when you get there. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. My next guest is always staying very busy trying to find out important information and to make the government better for the American people. It's U.S. Senator Ron Johnson from the state of Wisconsin who joins us on the phone now. Sir, good to have you back with us.
Well, Vince, hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well. First of all, I want to thank you for that health summit hearing that you held on Monday. You brought together so many really talented people to talk about the ways in which the American diet is poisoning us and the way the government is involved in that. Casey and Callie Means and Jordan Peterson and Dr. Marty McCary. So many great people. Thank you for doing that. It's been I was actually shocked to see a congressional hearing that sounded like that.
Well, thanks for noticing. It was a public event. I'm not a chairman, so I can't hold a hearing, but RFK Jr. was there. You know, just a lot of very, very famous social media nutritionists and that. And so it really got a lot of notice. And it's really the first step. Let's hope Trump wins. Bobby Kennedy gets appointed the czar over fixing the chronic illness. And we'll be having a lot of these conversations. But it's, you know, it allowed people to ask questions that we haven't been able to ask in the past.
Yes.
So it was really enjoyable kind of moderating the whole panel.
And just my last point on this subject, and then I want to move on. I want to talk July 13th with you. But, you know, in Washington, all the debates around healthcare expenditures are always like, are we going to spend more on this? Are we going to cut here? Are we going to spend more on that or cut here? And what nobody ever talks about is why don't we just make Americans more healthy so we don't have to spend any of this at all? And what you just did this week started, I think, a really important conversation that could get all of that back on track.
Yeah, well, I certainly hope so. And again, it also shows you how you heal and unify a nation. You set your differences aside like Bobby Kennedy and Donald Trump did.
Yeah.
You focus on an area of agreement, a big problem, and solve that working together. Great example.
So good. All right. Also this week, your committee, part of releasing this report on the events of July 13th, it seemed like Democrats on your committee were also very unhappy with the state of the Secret Service. What were you surprised to find out, or what stands out to you, Senator Johnson?
Well, first of all, again, I got to give a shout out to the other three offices. I mean, this was a very bipartisan product because we were all committed to doing a bipartisan investigation the American public can have confidence in. You know, I think the first thing to state is what we know about July 13th primarily comes from local law enforcement. You know, my staff immediately reached out to local law enforcement. We issued a preliminary report really within about 10 days. Pretty well laid out what we now know about you know, the failures, and this report puts meat on the bones. What, from my standpoint, the more important part of this report is the very end where we lay out what we haven't received yet. But in terms of revelations, probably the most troubling one and somewhat bizarre is we've talked to two of the four snipers. The sniper on the Hercules 2 team, this is the one that was obstructed from Crooks. They couldn't see him. He couldn't see them. There's a tree in their way. They believe a bullet passed between them. They heard the zip crack of a bullet. But the one sniper that we interviewed said he thought his partner was hit, and he looked over and his partner wasn't hit. He said, how far away was that bullet on our left? And his partner said, I thought the bullet was on our right. They're about 6 feet apart. So that just opens all kinds of questions. And, of course, we're not getting the information from the Secret Service and the FBI. We don't have the transcripts of their over 1,000 interviews. We've only been able to interview 12 people. We don't have crime scene photos. We don't have the autopsy, the toxicology report. Apparently, we just subpoenaed the autopsy. That's the first subpoena we've issued. We don't have the information on Crooks' social media accounts. Apparently, the encrypted foreign accounts he had. You know, why are they withholding all this? You know, they released the letter with the $150,000 payment to assassinate Trump, but they won't tell us about Crooks, who's no longer with us.
Yes, yeah, Ryan Ruth and his bounty on Trump's head. That's the man who tried to assassinate Trump in Florida by his own admission. The events of July 13th. Is it standard practice for the Secret Service to delete all of its radio communications? Why was it all deleted? Why don't we have any of that?
Well, apparently what they say is unless it's a presidential detail, they don't record them. Now, local law enforcement record all theirs, which has been very helpful in terms of putting together a very detailed timeline.
Yeah.
What we do know is, and this is going to a different event that has a lot of questions surrounding it. Secret Service, they deleted all their texts from January 6th conveniently. So, no, these are agencies that have given us no reason to trust them. Let's put it that way.
It's crazy. I don't know why you would do that unless you were trying to cover something up, because it's always good to be able to posthumously look back at an event and then use that as a way to construct how you do events in the future. But I guess the habit there is secrecy. And one of the things that stands out to me, Senator Johnson, is the timeline of events down to the second. In the video footage from the body cam, the local officer's body cam who climbed up and saw Thomas Crooks on the roof and then dropped down, that occurred 37 seconds before Thomas Crooks began opening fire. That was 37 entire seconds from the moment that he sees an armed man on the roof to the moment that President Trump is being shot. How, over that 37 seconds, how doesn't the Secret Service get on stage and take him down?
Well, because what we revealed, and again, we confirmed this through our interviews, the communications were completely siloed. They had separate command centers. So we weren't talking to each other in any efficient manner. And by the way, we've known about the siloed communication. I remember holding hearings about interoperability of radios.
Yes.
Between these, federal and local law enforcement. They just don't fix it. It's a big old federal bureaucracy. They just demand more money, which, by the way, now, they don't need more resources. Their budget has gone up 65% in the last 10 years from $2 to $3.3 billion. The headcount's gone up 32% from 6,300 to 8,300. I don't think they're really protecting any more people. Right now, they have 36 protectees, and they're housed in a department that has a budget of $190 billion and 240,000 employees who are detailed on a reasonably routine basis to the Secret Service during, sector surges.
Yeah.
So, again, it is galling, quite honestly, that the House attached another $230 million for Secret Service protection when they just don't need it. That's the problem around here is the solution's always more money.
Senator Johnson, there's a moment in your report this week that reveals that one of the snipers saw police officers running in the direction of Thomas Crooks with their guns out. He actually witnessed officers drawing their service weapons and running towards Crooks. The sniper told your committee that he never thought to convey that President Trump needed to be pulled off that stage. I realize this must be a really difficult moment to kind of triage if you're a sniper, but it does seem to me that might be part of the training where you indicate that the protectee needs to be quickly removed.
I have the same question. I'm sympathetic. I mean, you're in the moment, and that sniper is saying we were trying to figure out what was going on. But this is where trained professionals have to be trained to react quickly. You see officers with the gun, you pull the protectee, off the stage. Now, again, I'm sympathetic.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just one of the realities that occurred on July 13th. Again, the main thing that would have prevented that, rather than pick apart what somebody did or didn't do in a very tense moment.
Yes,
it's just the overall planning. I mean, the fact that perimeter didn't include that there was not coordination of the security system. That nobody was really in charge of protecting the roof. The local snipers were snipers. They weren't counter snipers. They were local snipers concealed in case there's a threat within the crowd. They had a completely different assigned task than looking for some other potential sniper. So, Again, it's just the planning of this was awful. The coordination was awful. The communication was awful. But again, we pretty well knew that within 10 days. And the other legitimate questions we have just aren't being answered by the Secret Service and FBI.
Senator Johnson, you just mentioned it in answer to this last question, but it sounds like, again, according to the report, that nobody in the Secret Service wants to claim responsibility for the events of July 13th, that your agency sought to figure out who was in charge, who signed off, who was the last word on this. And is it right that you were given the complete runaround on this? And do you believe that your committee is being lied to about that subject?
I think this is just, kind of the reality in government agencies. Got the same runaround when I asked Director of National Intelligence Avril Haines yesterday in our briefing who directed the unsolicited briefing between Senator Grassley and I that was later leaked and used to smear me and impact our election. But the fact is, in these agencies, like, everybody's responsible. So that means nobody's responsible and nobody can be held accountable. I literally think they structure it that way. I'm at least coming to believe that, which is, again, totally foreign to the private sector. No, you want to hold somebody in charge. I mean, who produced that roll of plastic? Who made that decision to ship that? You need accountability in the private sector. In government, apparently that is the last thing you require in a government agency is accountability. So, again, everybody's responsible.
Yeah.
We're all responsible for this, which means nobody is and nobody can be held accountable.
So just over a week ago, there was yet another attempt on President Trump's life. I mentioned this guy, Ryan Ruth, who tried to take a shot at him from inside of a tree line at a golf course in Florida. And the Secret Service's acting director, Ronald Rowe, came out after that and said that everything worked, that the Secret Service is doing its job now because one agent was able to spot this gunman and start shooting at him before he could take a shot at President Trump. I don't buy that. If he's getting that close, it sounds to me like things aren't working. What's your view on this subject?
No, it was another failure. Again, caused by a number of things. A completely unplanned visit to the golf course, so it put a lot of pressure on the Secret Service. But bottom line is, had Ruth not put his barrel through the fence, he wouldn't have been seen. He would have probably got a pretty easy shot at Trump. So that's the reality situation. They apparently did have a drone up there. They had infrared on there, but it's so hot and we have a lot of vegetation that doesn't necessarily work that well. They didn't have dogs. They probably should have dogs. They're going to fix that. They should have, from my standpoint, they ought to have surveillance cameras guarding that golf course, because Trump golfs there a lot, so that you can quick speed up time lapse to see if any movement is inside that heavy foliage, as long as you have heavy foliage. So no, it was not a success. I mean, acting director Rose just, he's trying to make it sound good. They were so lucky to avert disaster, but that one agent who saw that alert, God bless him, he's probably saved President Trump's life, maybe other lives too.
Finally, Senator Ron Johnson, and thank you for your time as always. The Biden administration is insisting this week that there is a pressing Iranian threat against President Trump, and they briefed President Trump on this subject. I wish I could trust the intel community a little bit more in general, given all of the times they've misled us on so many things. What do you think about this claim, of a pressing Iranian threat against Trump's life?
I don't doubt it. I mean, Iran's been tried to take out Bolton, Mike Pompeo. Yep. They want to harm the great state, and so I have no doubt that they would love to take out President Trump. They sure don't want him to be president, which ought to tell the American public something, right?
Yes. No, big time.
But no, I don't doubt that. So President Trump has to take these things very seriously. If I were President Trump, I would make sure I have my own head of security overseeing that, whatever the Secret Service does is adequate.
Amen. All right, Senator Ron Johnson, thank you as always. Really appreciate your time and your efforts in Congress. Thank you, sir. I worked the fries, she says. Tell us more. Tell us literally anything else about that job. What was that like? Can you imagine running into Kamala Harris at McDonald's? Oh, all right. Let's see here. Ted is calling in from Loudoun County now, line 4. Ted, good afternoon to you, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, Ted.
Hey, thank you for taking my call and appreciate your show.
Thank you, sir.
I have two statements for you. One, I think Donald Trump and the news media needs to push this. I did my research in the last 43 months. The U.S. government has given $602 billion to illegals. Why can't they give that to help our vets out? The people who've served our country, fought for our country, have become unemployed, or however you want to put it. Why can't we spend that kind of money on them instead of illegals?
Excellent point. Excellent point.
I mean, that needs to be pushed, to be shoved down her throat.
Yeah, yeah.
And the statement I will make is I've seen the bumper stickers. I took a yard sign and taped it to the back of my truck. It's on the rear tailgate.
You have an entire yard sign? Wait. You have an entire yard sign taped to the back of your truck? That's awesome. So that's huge.
It is huge.
Yeah.
And the fun part of this is it's very interesting that I drive to work early in the morning and come home middle of the day. People are always up your tush, and I can read the VIN numbers. I can count the number of teeth in their mouth because they're following me so close. They're nowhere near the ass of that truck with that Trump sticker or the Trump yard sign on it. So I don't know if they're intimidated by it, or they want other people to see it, or they're scared I may have a weapon in the car. I don't know. But I thought it was funny that by putting that on, people stay away from the truck.
How about that? That's awesome. What does the sign say? Is it just a Trump Vance 2024?
It's not even Trump Vance. It's Trump before he picked Vance.
Oh, okay, cool.
So I have some big signs. You'll start seeing them on Route 7 here shortly, but it's interesting to see that people stay back from the truck. I don't know why. I don't know what did that other than that.
All right. Well, if we start seeing any unusual traffic patterns, Ed Rodriguez will know why, as people try and stay away from the back of the truck. Thank you very much for the call. I appreciate that, Ted. Good point. Yeah, there's a lot of spending going on for the illegals. If you're a foreign national who just swims into the country, do we have a deal for you. There's a massive welcome kit for you. If you're a veteran who's honorably served our country, we've given you enough. That's the Biden-Harris position. Not the American people. They're on the other side of that. Let's take care of our veterans. It's 429. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, from the Arlington GOP, Matthew Hurt will be here at 5:30 ahead of our big get out the vote effort tomorrow. We'll be doing some early voting at the Arlington Courthouse Plaza. That's at 8 o'clock in the morning. Coffee and donuts and lots of votes. It'll be fun. Come out and say hello. Can't wait to see you there. Volodymyr Zelensky is in the country this week at U.S. taxpayer expense. He flew to Pennsylvania earlier in the week to very obviously campaign for Kamala Harris. It was so obvious that Speaker Mike Johnson is now demanding that Volodymyr Zelensky fire the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States by the name of Oksana Markarova. He said it was a, quote, short-sighted and intentionally political visit to that weapons factory in Pennsylvania. Remember also Zelensky attacked both President Trump and J.D. Vance in an interview ahead of his arrival to the United States. And just moments ago, Kamala Harris, a part of an effort between the Biden-Harris administration to give another $8 billion to Ukraine, attacked Americans who are looking to resolve that war and said, we're going to stay in that war. And in fact, we're going to fight to get Ukraine in NATO so that we have more opportunities for war going forward. Take a listen.
However, in candor, I share with you, Mr. President, there are some in my country who would instead force Ukraine to give up large parts of its sovereign territory, who would demand that Ukraine accept neutrality and would require Ukraine to forego security relationships with other nations. These proposals are the same of those of Putin. And let us be clear, they are not proposals for peace. Instead, they are proposals for surrender, which is dangerous and unacceptable. So, President Zelensky, I look forward to our discussion today, and I will continue to work with you to ensure Ukraine prevails in this conflict and remains a free, democratic, and independent nation.
So no end in sight to the war. That's the Vice President of the United States. Joining us now, Congressman Andy Harris is on the phone. He represents Maryland's 1st Congressional District. He's also the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. Sir, good to have you back with us.
Good afternoon.
So Vladimir Zelensky arrives in the country, and he's flying around on a C-17 paid for by taxpayers. He's campaigning in Pennsylvania for Kamala Harris, and now he's getting $8 billion from the Biden-Harris administration. What am I missing?
Well, we hear now he's also asking to see President Trump on Friday in New York. If I were the president, I'd just say no. The bottom line is that this war is endless. It's about time that again we seriously consider forcing Ukraine to the bargaining table and end what could end up as World War III.
I mean, one of the things that's keeping us from World War III right now is the fact that Ukraine's not in NATO. So why is Kamala Harris fighting to make Ukraine a part of it?
You're absolutely right. I think that's a complete non-starter now. The bottom line is the threat of Ukraine getting into NATO was one of the things that started this war. Look, they could be a major non-NATO ally, which is a special designation the United States has. But again, to put Ukraine in NATO at this point in time would be inviting World War III.
So I noticed something courtesy of my friend Mark Levin, who can be heard every day, of course, here at 6 o'clock. He was pointing out today, this is the opposite treatment that the Biden-Harris administration gives Israel. They're constantly attacking Israel and saying Israel needs to end this war now. They need to instantly give up any more prosecuting of the war against Hamas and Hezbollah. Yet that's not the posture they take in Ukraine. In Ukraine, it's like this war goes on forever, no peace in sight.
You've hit the nail on the head. Obviously, they have a very different attitude toward Ukraine than they have toward Mr. Netanyahu's government in Israel. That was attacked, just like Ukraine was attacked and invaded from a bordering country. So was Israel, and yet they want Ukraine to pursue the war, including allowing Ukraine to use some of our weaponry into Russia, and yet they don't want Israel to use our weaponry into Gaza. It's just a fascinating hypocrisy.
And how concerned should the American people be if this war continues to escalate between Ukraine and Russia about the use of nuclear weapons? Because as it stands, even this week, Vladimir Putin is now once again threatening the use of nuclear weapons. Washington's posture seems to be, oh, he's bluffing. He can't be serious. Let's continue the way we're going.
Well, there are different levels of use of nuclear weapons. Some of them are smaller nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons. I don't think he'd hesitate if Ukraine threatens Moscow. I don't think he'd hesitate to use one. Ukraine, of course, gave up its nuclear weapons in return for the U.S. guaranteeing its territorial integrity. And then when Russia crossed the border in 2014 into Crimea, Barack Obama just whistled past the graveyard on that one.
Yeah, and now we're looking at over 1 million casualties in that conflict between the dead and the wounded, and the numbers continue to only mount. It's just awful what the war machine is funding here. Let me talk about funding with you. Speaker Mike Johnson and company were able to orchestrate another can kick yesterday, a 3-month continuing resolution passing the House. What are we to make of this? All of a sudden, it goes to December 20th. This feels like yet another rush to spend a lot of money before Christmas.
Well, I think certainly that's what Chuck Schumer has on his mind. Look, I'm very sorry that our effort failed for the longer CR that would have put it into what we hopefully is Mr. Trump's presidential administration, and combine that with the SAVE Act, which the vast majority of Americans support, which of course would say that illegal immigrants can't vote in federal elections. It's kind of a no-brainer. But since that failed, we were left with the alternative of shutting down the government, a month before a very important election, or doing this into December. And then again, the speaker has promised there is going to be no December omnibus. I hope, and we will try to keep him to his word, because that's very dangerous to the American people. It's very expensive and very dangerous.
Yeah, it definitely is. If December comes and there is an omnibus just before Christmas and Speaker Johnson fails to keep his word, do you think he actually becomes Speaker again next year?
No, there's virtually no way that could happen.
In other words,
I'm assuming that President Trump doesn't get elected and ask for everything to be cleared up. I don't think he will. But excepting for that circumstance, there's just no way he would be Speaker.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. So if President Trump gets elected in November and he says, "Hey, let's just do an omnibus for now. We'll deal with all of this later," that would be the only way that Speaker Johnson survives.
That's right. And even then, there's a question. Even then.
Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so lastly, what's going to happen with this spending fight? It's in your estimation, in your prediction.
I think you tell me who wins the election. I'll tell you what happens with the spending fight. It really all depends on whether we retain the House. Looks like we will gain the Senate, and of course, whether we regain the White House.
And gaining a sizable Republican majority in the House is super important for a bunch of reasons. But one of them is January 6th. I hear some Democrats are trying to declare Trump, ineligible to be president of the United States next year if he wins. It's going to take a Republican majority to stop that, right, Congressman?
Well, that certainly sounds like a threat to democracy to me. Just call me old-fashioned.
Yeah.
But yes, we will have to have a majority in place that will, stand for President Trump's election. If he's duly elected, he needs to be sworn in on the 20th.
All right. Of course, that's true. Congressman Andy Harris, thank you very much from Maryland. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Thank you, Vince.
All right. Let me go now to some breaking news. Let's just keep the audio down on this for just a moment because I want to make sure to cue it up to the right moment. President Trump just began speaking. He's doing a press conference at this hour just moments ago. Let's pick up live. Here's the President of the United States.
Thank you very much, everybody. For nearly 4 years, we have been living through the worst border crisis in the history of the world. There's never been anything like it, which has brought untold suffering, misery, and death upon our land. The architect of this destruction is Kamala Harris. When you look at the 4 years that have taken place, after being named border czar, Kamala Harris will be visiting the southern border that she has completely destroyed, from what I understand, tomorrow. Why would she go to the border now, playing right into the hand of her opponent? I mean, you take a look at this. Why would you do that? There can be no justification for what she's done. There's nobody saying, oh, gee, she's done a fabulous job. She's done the worst job probably in the history of any border, not just our border.
He's both reading from a script.
She keeps talking about how
He's reading from a script and ad-libbing, as he often does when he looks at a teleprompter and then ad-libs. But I just want to make sure that that's out there. He's reading from a script here because they clearly have a message that they want to share today. This was well considered. They announced this press conference some time ago. Here it is. I'll try not to interrupt it so much.
Supposedly wants to fix the border. We would merely ask, why didn't she do it 4 years ago? It's a very simple question. I can say this with everything she has. She talks about borders and taxes and all these different things. Her policies on tax, by the way, are terrible, but I can say it for everything. Why didn't she fix it almost 4 years ago? She's got no plans, got no talent, got no ability to do it. I'm here today to present you with the facts and only the facts about how Comrade Kamala Harris willfully threw open our border, helping to virtually destroy our country. Our country's never been under siege like this. 4 years ago, Kamala inherited the most secure border in U.S. history, with the lowest illegal immigration on record. You know the chart. I love that chart. I love that chart.
Saved his life.
I probably wouldn't be here right now except for that chart. Those who violated our borders were captured, detained, and quickly sent back home under the Trump administration. But on her first day in office, Kamala Harris terminated every single Trump policy that sealed and secured the border. She ordered an immediate stop to the completion of the border wall, was almost complete. We built hundreds and hundreds of miles of wall, and it worked. I always said walls and wheels. Everything else is obsolete, but walls and wheels, and this wall worked. And we were ready to build and throw up another 200. Could have been done within weeks. Everything was complete. The wall was all built, ready to go, laying there, ready to be fixed. All they had to do is throw it up, and you would have had an extra 200 miles of wall, far more than I promised in the election.
CNN and MSNBC
She suspended all
are ignoring this
deportations.
speech right now.
She instituted catch and release across the entire southern border. And we had catch and release also, but we released in Mexico. Her catch and release was to release in the United States and never see them again. She sent Congress a bill demanding amnesty for all illegal aliens, every single illegal alien, even if they're criminals, even if they're murderers, even if they're drug dealers, human traffickers. She wanted amnesty for everybody. Radical left. This is a radical left person. She terminated Remain in Mexico, something that took me and a lot of talent, a lot of other people, but it took a lot of talent to get from the president of Mexico, a good man. But we got it. You had to remain in Mexico. You couldn't come in under any circumstance. You weren't allowed into the United States until we checked it out, and many people did not come in and were not allowed to come in because they didn't check out. They were drug dealers. They were gang members. They were in jail for murder in a couple of cases. We wouldn't let them in. And she canceled every Safe Third agreement. Anybody here, I think, would know what that is, but that was a horrible thing that she did. And she canceled Remain in Mexico. Here we have something, Remain in Mexico. You don't have to explain it. She canceled. She ordered ICE to halt the removal of virtually all criminal aliens, including MS-13 gang members, the worst gang anywhere in the world, they say. Evil, evil gang.
All right, so President Trump continues from New York at this hour talking about the border crisis. The reason, of course, that he's doing this is Kamala Harris's campaign in a desperate tailspin on this issue right now, sending her to the border tomorrow. This is providing some footage that the networks, if they dare show any of it, will have some obligation to show as they compare and contrast the two of these candidates. President Trump trying to basically set the frame so that people understand who she really is and what this administration is responsible for. More in a moment, and I assume that he will be getting to questions. We'll keep tracking this. This is a press conference, so one would expect he would take questions from the press today, unlike somebody else who's running for president.
She did nothing to stop any of it. In fact, she encouraged them to keep coming, and you know that. For years she did. Only recently did she say, oh, well, we're going to try and put a stop to it. And I ask again, this should be the why didn't she do it speech. Why didn't she do it? All of these things, including unrelated elements to what we're talking about now, like taxes, like military, like so many other things. Why didn't she do it? She's got plans for the future. Why didn't she do it? She's been there almost 4 years. Kamala created a brand new program to fly in migrants from Venezuela, Haiti, and Nicaragua and resettle them in American communities, including small towns all across our nation, but in particular in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, and North Carolina. Nobody can believe it. These towns have been destroyed, and the mayors of the towns and the governors of the states can't talk about it because they're embarrassed that they allowed it to happen. In addition, through her phone app, something totally new now, it's a phone app for migrants, where migrants call in, highly sophisticated migrants. She's allowed virtually unlimited numbers of illegals to press a button, schedule their illegal immigration appointment at our ports of entry, and show up to be released into the interior of our country.
All right, President Trump continues his remarks from New York City. We'll keep tracking the speech here. We'll bring you to the news, and when we get back, I assume he'll be entering into some of the Q&A portion of this press conference. Looking forward to that. Stay with us here on the Vince Coglianese Show.